Welcome back. All right. I have Michele Spring here with me today. She's an autoimmune health coach. And before I turn it over to her, I just want to briefly mention how I met Michele. And Michele, I don't even know if you know, if listeners, if you have listened to this podcast, you may have gotten a sense that I am a little weird when it comes to connecting with people. And so Michele actually won a contest for her business in a program that I am in. And I just reached out to her, congratulated her. And I wasn't so awkward as I was with Kelly. I'll just mention that story. I just told her I wanted to be friends. And and so if I want to be connected with people, I just do it and set aside they may reject me and I can cope with that. So that was, I think, maybe 2022. Does that sound right?
Yeah. 2022. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That was so exciting. I was so proud of you. I'm I have to reach out to her. Anyways, let me go ahead and turn it over to you. Can you tell us just a little bit about who you are and briefly what you do before we dive into your story?
Yeah, sure. I'm Michele Spring, as you mentioned, and I run the website and Instagram, everything, Thriving Autoimmune. And I'm an autoimmune health coach who helps women with Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism feel better through lifestyle, diet, and mindset, basically. Yeah.
I can't wait later to talk more about the symptoms and what that looks like. And I just wonder if there's anybody in this audience that is experiencing those symptoms and has no idea, because certainly before I met you, I had no idea that this was a thing or a struggle for people. And yeah, it's just so good to get the word out. So I know before I hit record, you were telling me a little bit more about your story and that your mom, growing up, she had always been a worrier, and that you noticed in your 20s that your anxiety was getting worse and you were starting to have panic attacks. Can you tell us what was going on for you at that time?
So yeah, like I mentioned, my mom always worried. If I would go out in high school, she would wait up. I had an early curfew because she did not want to wait up till 1 a.m. So, but no matter what I did, she was always worrying. And we didn't have cell phones back there. And so she couldn't track me. We couldn't call each other very easily or anything like that. So it must have been so difficult. But yeah, that's how I grew up, with a mom who constantly worried about everything I did. And so I thought that that was kind of normal, first of all. Mm-hmm. But as I was growing up in my 20s, I started to notice these same things were happening. And this was prior to me having kids. Just even some of the weirdest things, I would just start worrying over. And anxiety just started kind of creeping in. And then I met my now husband, and he fell while trying to walk out of a cross-country skiing lodge and broke his leg. And I had gone out to breakfast that morning because he was doing this for a work trip. I wasn't even with him. I had gone out to breakfast with my coworkers, came back to 15 phone calls saying there's been an accident.
Oh, no.
And learning that he only broken his leg, but still I had to go up to the mountains and go get him. And after that, the anxiety got worse. And then just a few months later, while we're in the midst of our wedding preparations, well, that was during our wedding preparations. After that, we had just gotten married, and he was on a Vespa scooter and got hit by a car.
Oh my gosh.
And I drove by the accident, saw all of the sirens and the all of the lights flashing and everything like that. And I felt to the pit of my stomach that it was him, but I had no idea at the time. I just drove by it. And then a little while later, he calls me and tells me that they're bringing him to the hospital because he was the one in that accident. Luckily, he only had a broken knee and a broken rib and, nothing too bad, but still all of these things happening within just a first couple of weeks of marriage. Yeah. And then my mom got diagnosed with type 4 cancer, stage 4.
Stage 4. Yeah.
Melanoma cancer all around the same time, right? So all of these things were all happening.
That is a lot.
So it was so
I
much.
just want to say that.
Yeah. No. I mean, it would be a lot for anyone. But so my anxiety was through the roof, and I started having panic attacks nonstop.
Yeah.
Where if my husband didn't come home within 5 minutes of the time that he said he was going to come home, I would be on the floor in the fetal position, crying, completely freaked out. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And around this time, I actually discovered that I had hypothyroidism as well. And so a lot of this was like, there was exhaustion involved. Planning a wedding is hard.
It's a lot.
All of this kind of stuff. I had actually been an Ironman triathlete. So I got done doing that as well. So like, there's
Burning
a lot
the candle
on my
at
body.
both ends. Yes.
I mean, looking back now, I'm like, no wonder. But all of these together just kind of all piled in together. So then I found out that I had hypothyroidism and I went on thyroid medication.
So let me pause you here,
go
if
ahead.
that's okay. If people haven't heard of hypothyroidism, what are some signs? Like, how would they know? I mean, obviously they can get evaluated, but just some signs, symptoms.
Some classic typical symptoms are exhaustion that doesn't seem to go away. It's like that kind of bone deep fatigue that just you have all the time. Even if you get in 12 hours of sleep, you wake up, you don't feel refreshed. Weight gain that seems very stubborn. You can't seem to get rid of it, or you just seem to be eating what you used to, and yet you're still putting on pounds and you can't lose any weight. Hair loss, especially if you're brushing your hair and you just notice a lot more hairs coming out, dry skin, constipation. These are a lot of the common ones that we'll see, like also cold hands and feet or feeling cold all the time.
Okay.
They're the classic ones. I had a lot of those, but the exhaustion was the one that actually wound me up in the doctor's office because I thought I had mono. I was just so tired all the time. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I have had mono before, and that is intense.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I was not somebody who would sleep in class, and this was back in high school, and I was just taking naps every day. Yeah. Nobody said anything, which I thought was so odd. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Back to you. So you were just exhausted, and you're like, something is not right. I need to go to the doctors.
Yeah. All of these things were happening. And so I was like, I'm going to go to the doctor. Thinking I had mono, he ran some tests and found out I had hypothyroidism, which means your thyroid function is sluggish. It's slow. And so then he put me on thyroid medication. And for a couple of years, that worked great. I was fine. Like the anxiety actually kind of went away. Went away, but
talk about that.
Severely lessened. Yeah. And then the exhaustion got a lot better. Like I had a lot more energy. Like I was able to lose the weight, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then unfortunately, as time went on, I kept on chasing doses, right? Like I would go to the doctor and we would adjust my medication based on my thyroid levels. It was back and forth all the time. And I never seemed to be able to get to the right dose. I was either starting to feel the anxiety again, or I was so tired. And no matter what I did, we couldn't seem to get to the right dose. And a lot of times my doctor would just be like, it's all like you're doing everything you can. Yeah, and I felt so defeated. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then again, all of that started coming back. The exhaustion, the weight gain, the anxiety, all of it was starting to come back. And at this point, I had 2 small kids, right? Toddlers who were really small. And I couldn't even get off the couch to play with them. They would ask me to play a board game. And I couldn't even get off the couch to do that because it was a monumental task.
Yeah. It's like not lack of motivation. It's pure exhaustion.
Oh, yeah.
Pure exhaustion. Yeah. My goodness. So tell me a little bit about the connection between your thyroid and anxiety.
Hypothyroidism, as I mentioned, is a sluggish thyroid.
Yeah.
However, in the Western world, 90% of hypothyroidism is caused by an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's. And what that means is that your body's gotten a little confused and started attacking its own tissue, which we don't want. But it's quite common. They say over 50 million people in the US alone have autoimmune disease. And by some counts, that could be low. It actually could be a lot higher because people don't actually know that they have it. A lot of times there's a whole wide range of crazy symptoms. And so they're really hard to pinpoint.
Yeah.
But so this autoimmune disease attacks the thyroid. And as it attacks the thyroid, you have thyroid hormones stored in your cells. And as the thyroid hormone or the thyroid cells get destroyed, that hormone gets dumped out into your bloodstream. And so now you have extra thyroid hormone circulating in your bloodstream, which actually makes you have symptoms like anxiety and insomnia and feeling like shaky and all of those symptoms where you like, if you've had too much coffee, it feels like that. That's actually like a hyperthyroid state where there's too much thyroid hormone. Wow. But then unfortunately, once your thyroid tissue has been destroyed, then you can't produce enough thyroid hormone. And then you go back into the hypothyroid state where you have the exhaustion and the weight gain and the cold intolerance and all that kind of stuff.
What a vicious cycle. I know
Yeah.
before we started recording, I asked, is it because of mineral deficiencies? Because I've heard of that too. And I'm familiar with like, if we're not getting enough of certain vitamins and minerals that can be associated with anxiety. This is something totally new to me where this hormone's like just dumping into everywhere in the body and creating those symptoms. That's fascinating.
I know.
Okay. So then what? Like now the medication is not working anymore. That's really the option that the medical field has for you.
I mean, I asked my doctor so many times if there was anything else I could do. I even started doing research on my own and started reading about changing your diet, if that could help. And I asked him multiple times if that could help. Because at this time, I had no idea that I had an autoimmune disease. I just knew that I had hypothyroidism. And eventually, I finally got so frustrated because I was sitting outside one day and I could not look in my kids' eyes and tell them I couldn't play anymore, that I finally said, all right, I'm going to go see a functional medicine practitioner, which is not cheap.
Right.
But I did some research and I found one here in Colorado. And he ran a bunch of tests and found out I had the autoimmune disease Hashimoto's, which, like I said, 90% of people with hypothyroidism have. But so he said, hey, the good news about this is that you can actually put that autoimmune disease into remission. We can't actually cure it. There is no such thing as a cure for autoimmune disease because once your body knows how to attack itself, it always does. But you can put it into remission so it stops all of the symptoms. And I was like, great, let's do it. And so he told me to do the autoimmune protocol diet or AIP diet.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, bring it on. I'm doing it.
I'll do it. Yeah.
I was desperate at that time. And I mean, it's a restrictive protocol because there's a lot of, you have to remove like grains and eggs and seeds and nuts and nightshades and a lot of stuff. But you only do it for a short period of time and then you start reintroducing foods. I went through this and within like maybe 3 weeks, I felt better than I had in my like 15 years. It was crazy. Like all of my symptoms.
3 weeks, you felt better than you had in the last 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
It was crazy. Yeah.
I have a curious question. What the heck is a nightshade?
The nightshade's like things like tomatoes, eggplants, chili peppers, bell peppers, all of those kind of things.
So you notice a difference that quickly. And then what?
And then I continued on the diet because basically the idea is that like your gut has some damage that is sustained from stress and food and all this stuff, toxins in your life or whatever. And so you have to heal your gut. And so 3 weeks isn't long enough to really heal your gut. So I stayed on it for, I think it was like a total of 3 months before I started reintroducing foods. I don't usually wait that long with my clients anymore, but like I just did because I didn't know anything.
You didn't know, yeah.
But so like I did 3 months and then you just start reintroducing foods one by one to see if they produce a reaction or not. And then if they don't, then you can bring them back in your diet full time, which was fascinating to me because I got to paprika and I got depressed. Isn't that the strangest thing? Like I had paprika.
It feels shocking to me.
The day I had paprika, when I introduced it, we went to a Fish show, the band Fish, right? Which I love. We do this once a year. And I'm at this band, thousands of people in the crowd. And I'm like, this is like so not into it.
Oh my gosh.
What's going on? And the next day I felt so super depressed too. And then it went away. And I was like, oh, maybe that was just something weird, right? So I'll just like stop and not have paprika. I tried it again a month later, same exact thing. Like, isn't that crazy?
I'm just like in shock right now. Yeah. Like,
I never ever would have thought something like paprika would have done that.
No.
But I kept trying it month after month until about a year later when it finally was fine. As you heal, you can tolerate more and more foods. But so like I was like, I'm going to have that paprika one.
Okay.
And
tell me if I'm going down like a weird rabbit trail, but now I'm like, heal your gut. Like, how does the gut get damaged? What is healing? I may be asking way too much for this episode.
Like, let me see like the easiest way I can explain this. So your gut's like basically like a giant, one of those tube water slides.
Yes. Okay.
Right? Like an enclosed tube, right?
Yep.
So that's the way I love to explain it. And inside there's kind of like shag carpet. That's the lining of your gut.
Love it. Okay.
And Sometimes the shag carpet gets damaged, and that
Got
can
it.
happen because you eat foods that you're not tolerating very well, just maybe temporarily because of some issues like some food intolerances or something like that. Stress can damage it, toxins can damage it. And there's like a whole bunch of things that can
Okay.
cause damage to it. But especially in the case of like autoimmune disease, they have proven that in most cases of autoimmune disease, there is some form of this gut damage. It's called increased intestinal permeability, or leaky gut is the
I've heard. Yes.
leaky
Yes.
gut. Yeah,
Yep.
that's the nickname for it. The shag carpet can be missing or bent, or parts of it could be not
I'm
there,
following. Yep.
and all of this kind of stuff. And so the problem with that is that it can produce holes. So if you think of like the tube water slide where there's like water dripping out of it,
Yes.
we don't want that, because that means that food particles and pathogens and all kinds of stuff can get into the immune layer right underneath your gut lining. And then immune layer is your first layer of defense saying, hey, we have a problem here. And when that immune layer keeps getting activated, then that causes a chronic system-wide inflammatory response in your body, which is not great. A whole host of diseases can happen from chronic inflammatory issues, right? And also can cause an immune overreaction. So that's why we get a lot of these food intolerances. So you could eat an egg, which you might be totally fine with if you had a totally healed gut, but the egg protein's getting into that immune layer, and your immune layers say, oh, no, we shouldn't have this. It's a foreign invader. And it causes this whole entire system-wide response, which a lot of times results in like rashes and you feeling exhausted and you feeling nauseous or bloated or whatever. So that's why healing that gut lining so that you don't have those holes anymore is so important, because then food can pass through as it should, and you don't get the reactions.
Got it. Thank you so much for taking the time to explain that. I have a feeling listeners are going to be like, what? Okay, this is really helpful. Okay. So you went on this AIP diet and then slowly reintroduced things. And then what? Like the anxiety, for the most part, was resolved because it was actually related to that.
I think to a certain extent, I have anxiety because of my personality type. I'm a type A, overachieving perfectionist, right? Yeah. And I learned last year that I have ADHD, and I've had that since I was little. And I've been masking very, very hard as an overachieving, control freak perfectionist my whole life to avoid people finding that out, that I had ADHD and that I was something wrong with me, right? And so all of this, I think, contributed to me having anxiety, as well as seeing my mom and learning that, having that learned behavior. The hypothyroidism on top of it, or the Hashimoto's, I put a magnifying glass on it. So it made it so much worse. And so I was so dysregulated, I couldn't even see the forest through the trees. There would be no way I could use any tools to feel better because it was just so bad. Whereas once I healed my gut and went through the AIP diet, the anxiety from the Hashimoto's went away. And so then I was just kind of left with that base layer of anxiety.
That makes sense.
The stuff from everything else that has gone on in my life. So then I was able to use tools to really regulate it. And I mean, I still get anxiety at points in time, depending like on things. I'm still me.
It makes sense.
But I have the tools now to regulate so that I'm not constantly in that state.
This makes sense. When women come into Brave Academy, the very first thing that we do, and they don't always want it to be this way, but that makes sense, is I take them through a nervous system recalibration protocol, because if they don't do that, there's a decent number of women that all the inner work just like bounces right off because they're so dysregulated that they can't apply it, take it in, understand it, feel it at a different level. So similar to what you're saying is it's so magnified until we recalibrate the nervous system, and then we can do the other steps.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
If you're in a panic state, you're not going to be able to think very well.
No.
I mean, scientifically, right?
Yeah.
Like your brain can't physically think when you are in that
prefrontal cortex is in Tahiti. Yeah. It's like, it's not there. So we got to bring it back online so we can do this higher level thinking for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. This is so fascinating. I love hearing about your story. What else? Where did you go from here?
So this all happened back in 2014, where I did the AIP diet and all that. And so from there, I've really kind of learned that I believe my hypothyroidism Hashimoto's really was the root cause of it was my nervous system dysregulation, the stress, the anxiety, all of that stuff, all that pressure I put on myself. Because I have found with so many of my clients, I would say like 95% of my clients are the type A overachieving kind of women.
Shocking.
I know. And it's just because like we're in a chronic state of nervous system dysregulation. And so when that happens, all of the functions in the body that need to get done, like in the parasympathetic rest and digest mode, don't get done. You don't digest your foods. You could be eating the healthiest diet on earth, but if you're not digesting the food and getting the vitamins and minerals in it, you're not
gonna matter. Yeah.
Right. And then you're not getting the repair of your tissues and the toxin removal and all of that kind of stuff that happens. And so we're in this constant state of nervous system and inflammatory response and all of that. It breeds basically an environment for autoimmunity and other chronic diseases. It's not surprising whatsoever that I got Hashimoto's after really looking back at my life, right? It's like once I found out that I had ADHD, I was like, that probably all makes sense.
Yes. It's all coming together.
Yeah. And so like I learned that after I did the AIP diet, because at first I didn't really pay attention to any of that stuff. I was like, it's all diet. I was all like, I became a food blogger because I was so convinced that like the AIP diet was the thing. Right? But then I started to realize that no, if you don't do all of the like the stress relief and making sure you're getting good sleep and you're not working out too much, ex-Ironman triathlete here, learned that one the hard way.
Half marathon and marathon runner. So I mean, not quite as intense, but right there with you.
Yeah, exactly. We're taught chronic cardio.
Yes.
Way to do it. But no, I mean, it can be very detrimental to your health if you do that too much. But like all of these things, I had to start dialing them in because I would notice if I worked out too much or if I had too much stress or if I didn't get good sleep or whatever, that I would start having symptoms creep back. I wouldn't say like a constant battle or anything like that, but it's just like I always have in my radar, like, am I sleeping well? Am I working out at my sweet spot? That kind of thing. So that way I'm making sure that all of the different components are kind of like in balance.
Yes.
And then as long as I do that, then everything like is great. I don't feel like I have a disease in that way.
Amazing. I know there's so many people out there who want to like do the solution one time and then have it work for life, but like nothing works like that. If we're thinking about anything with the body, anything, a car, you can't just mow the grass once and then, oh yeah, it's great. You can't just go to the gym once and then you're, ripped for life. You can't do the nervous system regulation or anything just once. And so when you're saying, well, just keep tabs on it, makes sense. And I love that keeping that awareness has really kept you in a much, 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 much better place than you were in the early 2010 and prior timeframe.
Oh, yeah. And I say now that I think getting an autoimmune disease is like the best gift I've ever been given because I was not a healthy person back then. I mean, I did my Ironman triathlon so that I could eat whatever I wanted. And I mean, I would get done a 4-hour run and come back and have fast food burger and fries and a Coke and then Fruity Pebbles because I wanted to eat whatever I wanted. And that's the kind of lifestyle I was brought up on and what I continue to live. And so I had to learn that like, this is not the best stuff to be putting into my body. And I learned later on with my kids, my son has type 1 diabetes. And when he got diagnosed with that, it wasn't that big of a deal for us.
No.
Okay, well, we got to how to live just so he doesn't die, but we didn't have to change anything with our diet or anything like that. And my other son had eczema.
kind of emotional about that. because I'm spiritual, you know that about me. And so I just like imagined him in heaven picking you out because it wouldn't be a big deal. You would know exactly what to do or know how to figure it out with no problem and be able to support him how he needed to versus if he went in a family that hadn't gone through something so tough. So anyway, I don't know why I just like, that's where my mind went. Yeah. There was something else you said that I wanted to say. Okay. Finish the piece about the eczema with your other son and then I'll go back.
So my younger son had eczema all over his body, completely over his body. And so when I first went on my AIP diet, we were not gluten-free at all because we had no idea. I actually have celiac disease as well. So when I went on the AIP diet, I just went gluten-free completely right at that point.
Yeah.
And we took the rest of the family on a gluten-free diet at the same time just to see. And my son's eczema completely went away.
Wow.
And he hasn't had to deal with it, except when we went to Mexico 2 years ago, he had some Oreo cookies that he thought were gluten-free because he didn't realize that all Oreo cookies are not gluten-free.
Yeah.
He woke up like a week later with terrible eczema all over his leg. So there was no question whatsoever that gluten affects him. And he's like, I'm done. I'm not having that again, Mom.
Wow, that's fascinating. I didn't know about that connection. Okay, so the thing that you mentioned, you said getting an autoimmune disease is the best thing that ever happened to me. I think that's what you said, right?
Yeah.
And I love that you shared this because so often what I see in my community and the way that I operated in the past and occasionally fall into is what I call fighting life and resisting life. Like, why is this happening? Like, I don't want this to be happening. This sucks so much. And I don't know if you were able to see this in the moment, but what you see very clearly now is this was for a grand purpose, for a better purpose. It made me more of the person that I want to be. It made me more of who I want to be for my sons and my family. And I love that because the more I think that we see that lesson over and over, we can apply it in the moment and stop fighting life so much.
100%. And I mean, it's giving me my purpose in life because I want to help other women understand this because so many doctors are not telling women this.
Yeah, they don't know, right?
Yeah, they don't know. Yeah.
They don't know. So let's go there next. This lit a fire in you at what point where you're like, I have to spread this to as many people as possible?
So when it first actually happened, so in 2014, when I was doing the AIP diet, I was like, I'm going to start a blog. I'm going to start a food blog. At least that's all I knew at the time.
Yeah.
And I got my health coaching certification around the same time, but I wasn't confident enough to really share that publicly. Like on the food blog thing, I would tell people in my email list. And so I started coaching clients through that, but I never really kind of claimed the whole health coach label until 2 years ago.
Oh my God.
Which is kind of crazy. So I was like, I've been coaching people for years, for a decade now.
Yes.
But it wasn't until 2 years ago where I was just like, you know what? I need to help people with the whole thing from the diet through really kind of releasing a lot of the stored emotions and stress and then regulating the nervous system and then dialing in their sleep and, all of the thoughts that go through your head of like, I'm a perfectionist and I'm not good enough, all that kind of stuff. The full gamut. I wanted to help people with all of that because I wanted people to really have that relief for life, not just for a 3-month period. Because a lot of people were doing that. They were doing like the AIP diet and then they would just go back to their old ways. And then I would see them again in 6 months. Because
it needs to be a lifestyle change. Okay. 2 questions. First one, I just want to mention, maybe it's less of a question, just for everyone listening. I saw the outline of your membership program and I was just blown away. I'm like, I am so excited. I feel like I want to join it because it's so comprehensive. And I just wanted to give you credit for that. Second, I would love if there is a moment that you had, or maybe a few moments that you had. What I heard was basically around 2 years ago, you finally stepped into your power and your worth and let people see what you're capable of. What happened? Was there a moment, a series of...
It's a series of things. It's been like a journey for the last 10 years. Because I think when I started doing the AIP diet and then all of this other stuff to really kind of regulate my nervous system and all that, it's kind of like a journey of self-improvement, right?
Yeah.
And starting to realize, hey, this attitude of mine affects my health, or being a perfectionist. If I'm a perfectionist, then if I eat something, do I start binge eating? That's not a good thing, right? So it's like all of these different kind of things all kind of play into each other. So it was between business coaching, like getting coached in our group, that kind of stuff. And then also just kind of learning about myself, all of it kind of a lot of self-exploration and trying to understand it all.
Beautiful.
And it finally, I think, got to a point. It's a never-ending journey. I'm never going to be
there
perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Damn.
But it got to the point where I was like, all right, I know enough
Yeah.
and I've helped enough people that I feel super confident that I could help a lot more people if I bring this to the world. And I was also, I think, so frustrated with seeing so many people coming to me being like saying, I had never known this before. And I'm so glad that you're the one who told me, but like so frustrating that there are so many women out there that don't know this stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I was like, I'm going to put my foot down and start telling people this because they need to know it.
I haven't looked at your Instagram numbers lately, but I feel like you had at least 150,000 followers last time I looked.
116,000, but yeah.
16. Okay. More than 100,000. So now, like, you are allowing yourself to be seen. You've stepped into your power. You're helping so many women. It's incredible. I hope you give yourself a lot of credit for that.
I try to, but I'm human, so I have my days where I don't.
Yeah, we all do, right? So, you know, the name of this podcast is Broken to Brave Podcast. And a lot of women who listen have had at least moments where they felt broken, whether it was something with their body or emotionally or mentally. And if someone listening is in that space right now, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that they have the power to make a change.
Yeah.
I have been there in 2014 before I started the AIP diet. I literally thought I was dying. I would go in my closet at night and cry every night, thinking that my family, my two little toddlers, were going to not have a mom because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I felt so stuck and broken and my body was failing me, all of that.
Mhm.
And if I had been told at that time that I had the power to make the change, like to have the hope, then everything would have changed. And so I just want them to know that they're not stuck. They can make changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't give up. The answer is out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Thank you. And where is the best place for people to find you?
Probably Instagram. It's at Thriving Autoimmune.
Okay. And I'll link that in the show notes.
Yeah, that's probably the best place.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story and inspiring others to make those shifts in their life too.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.